there are a lot of places in my life that are not healed, but there are also places that are healing and have been healed because of me getting the help that I need. Hey everyone, welcome to Heart to Hearts. I am Grace.
And I'm Terrence Hardge. Thank you for joining us today. We've had a lot of shows where we've actually kind of touched on vulnerability. Somehow what we talked about didn't actually make the cut. For example, the show on pornography, I kind of talked about how to get away with murder. Let's show folks the clip from that.
I recently mentioned how to Get Away with Murder became my favorite show. And right before that, it was Scandal. And I love Shonda Rhimes.
Mhm.
And I recall the moment on How to Get Away with Murder that it became my favorite show. Do you remember? I think I've told you. Do you remember that moment when it became my favorite?
Yes, yes.
What moment was it?
When she
Or you want me to say
took
it?
off all her makeup.
Oh, yes, yes.
Yeah.
It was Viola Davis slowly wiped off all her makeup and turned to her husband and said, holding up that phone, and asked, why is a picture of your penis on a dead girl's phone? It was so vulnerable. It was so real. And there's something about me, it's like I don't really care, so to speak, what people's issues are, as long as people are honest and vulnerable and real. And so she became one of my favorite actresses in that moment because she was willing to reveal herself. She was willing to be authentic. I like the authenticity of that moment.
I think it was a very vulnerable moment. I think it was probably vulnerable for her in real life. Like, that's a big deal, having to take up all your makeup and your weave. Ooh.
I just really like that part. I'm a man, and it also stuck out to me because I do think that to take up all your makeup, put yourself out there, kind of goes a long way. And the fact that she was willing to do that as an actress just made her skyrocket to the top of my favorite actress list. And I love Viola Davis to this day.
What did she do it for in the actual scene? Like, what was the purpose of her doing it?
In the scene, her husband was in the shower and she had just uncovered this information. And so she was sitting at her vanity and she wiped off all of her makeup. And then she confronted him because she was tired. She was tired of the pretense. I'm taking off the wig, I'm taking off the makeup, and we're going to confront this. And that's when she asked him that question.
And I'm not to call Viola Davis ugly by any means, but just having makeup on and taking it off, having the makeup on represents beauty, right? I think it correlates to needing for things to get ugly in order for you to be vulnerable. That's a different way of looking at it. And I wonder if me getting ugly, taking off my makeup, being my authentic self, if that is what the real fear is. Like, even as it relates to something happened to me, molestation, I was molested. To tell someone that is the real me, and it's an ugly truth about me it's something that I don't like about myself, but it's still a part of me, and it is an authentic part of me. And in order for me to be vulnerable, help someone, to be honest with someone, to make sure my relationship is solid, I have to do things that may not be appealing to me or other people.
Are you afraid of how people would respond?
Yes, there is a fear of how people will respond. There is a fear of what people may think. There's a fear of questions that may be asked. It's a lot that goes into it. A lot.
That's totally understandable. It's difficult to wipe our makeup off in front of, I'm not a makeup person, but it's difficult just to shed our clothes and to be naked and vulnerable in front of people, because the truth is there are a lot of people out there who are unkind. There are a lot of people who don't receive us. But the only way I think in some situations we can really receive true healing is to embrace vulnerability.
I agree. I think showing a part of yourself is a part of the healing. Now, who you show it to, use wisdom, but being able to do that definitely brings about healing.
Do you think that you would benefit from counseling?
Absolutely. Oh my goodness, I've been in counseling a long time. Yes, I absolutely benefit from counseling. And not only do I benefit from counseling, some of the questions that I asked during this segment, some of the questions that I would ask people just in general, have a lot to do with the counseling that I've been through. There are a lot of places in my life that are not healed, but there are also places that are healing and have been healed because of me getting the help that I need. So yeah, counseling is vital, I believe, which is interesting because that's kind of a really big taboo subject in the African American community.
Do you think that your story would or does help other people if you've shared it? Have you shared it?
No, I have not shared all of my story. Do I think it would help people? 100%. I'm a firm believer that when a person goes through trauma and tribulation as a child, you heal through those. And part of your responsibility from the healing is to help other people heal who've been through the same thing. I believe that with all my heart.
So, sis, I've seen you advocate for a lot of people. I've seen you work in foster situations, and it's been interesting to watch how certain situations will strike your heart. It's almost like you have a call to help people who need additional help, who need to have someone who understands the trauma that they come from. In addition to sharing your story, is there anything you can share about how your trauma and the horrific things that you went through, how that's kind of played out in helping other people who have been close to you?
I was a foster parent for like 10 years, I think. I saw a lot in all areas of foster care, on the professional side, with the caseworkers, with other foster parents, with the kids, biological family members. I've seen a lot. But one of the main things that drove me as a foster parent was being a protector over the kids that came in my home. I do believe that I've helped them in that way, just, providing a safe place, providing emotional support. That has been something that has helped. And it's because of what I've gone through. But I do know that the stuff that I've gone through is going to help people in a different arena, not just kids, just on a different level.
What are you most passionate about?
Advocating for people who are not able to advocate for themselves. Children, people with developmental disabilities, teenagers who have gone through trauma and are not in a place to advocate and take up for themselves. I'm passionate about that. You want to get me fired up, mistreat a kid.
I've seen that. It's so interesting to me how what we've gone through a lot of times points to our calling and our passions. I know sometimes when we go through things that are difficult, we wish that we had not gone through those things, but it's interesting how the most horrific things bring out sometimes the most beautiful, because you have someone there who will advocate.
I've heard people ask the question, the why me question, and even as it relates to not believing in God, because if there were a God, God wouldn't let this happen to me. I go a completely different route as it relates to things that I've gone through. I feel like I went through things to be an avenue for someone else. I feel like that's why most people go through things. You're able to talk to another parent about the difficulties you had with your child if a parent is going through that because you went through it. That's not to say people who haven't gone through things can't help other people, but they also can't relate. And that's for sure. Being able to relate, being able to empathize with a person. I think that is one of the main reasons we go through the things that we go through. Does it feel good? Absolutely not. Can it be prevented? Yes. And I'm a person who can help it be prevented because I've gone through it myself.
Yeah. I'm thinking about a verse that says, we have not a high priest who can't be touched with the feelings of our infirmities. I'm thinking about how Jesus was slaughtered. He literally went to the cross, and that opened up something beautiful for us, a relationship, with God. It's kind of hard to go into that with people going through trauma, who've been through abuse,
Right.
because sexual abuse is just awful. It's just devastating. And to try to apply meaning to that, to say, hey, you went through this so you can bless someone else, only with someone as mature like you would I even have that sort of conversation with, because people are.
But here's the thing. When you go through it, you know how not to be or touch on things like that because you've gone through it. Like I know what not to say to a person who just came out of trauma, because I know what I didn't want to hear. You know what I mean? And I think again, that's another reason why I feel like trauma helps you help other people.
That's really good. Can we go deeper into that? Can you tell us, for those that are listening, some of the stupid things, so to speak, or inappropriate things to say to somebody who's going through trauma?
I know this is kind of like a common one, a woman that has been sexually assaulted or raped, saying to her, you shouldn't have been in this place at this time, asking her questions relating to what she was doing as if she caused someone to assault her. Anything along those lines are not helpful, and it comes out of ignorance.
It almost makes them feel victimized over again.
All over again. Yeah, it does. Absolutely. 100%.
Questions along the lines, what were you wearing, or why were you in this location? Anything that suggests guilt on their part when they have literally been victimized by somebody.
And the thing is, you already feel that way. You already feel like you did something to bring this on yourself. And the person who is the perpetrator has already made you feel like that. The perpetrator is making you feel like that. You feel like that, when you walk away from the situation, you're questioning yourself. And then you have other people who are, I don't know what the cause is, but they are asking you questions or placing blame, victimizing you again. And it happens a lot. It happens a lot because people are ignorant to how to deal with people who are going through trauma. I'm being vulnerable.
Yeah, you are. So you talked about the negative things that people can say, the silly / stupid, hurtful things that people can say. What are helpful statements? What are embracing and affirming statements that can be said to someone who is going through?
This might sound weird, but I think one of the best ways to deal with a person who is actively going through trauma is to normalize it. This happens to a lot of people. And when it happens, it's never that person's fault. Letting them know you are not the only person who has gone through this and you can get through this because I, for example, have gone through it. And letting them know that you can help them go through it because of your experience. I want to cautiously say that because I don't think that, it's a time and a place for that. I don't think everybody should be like, oh yeah, I did, I went through this. It's not always helpful, but it can be.
That's good information. I'm thinking about some of the situations where I sit down with young men and mentor them. And I do very similar to what you've said, just kind of let them know how they can be identified with. Because sometimes people go through things, horrible things, and they feel like it's the end of the world. But to kind of give them some light and let them know you're not the only one, I think can make a difference in somebody's soul. Someone could be suicidal because they feel like, hey, I'm the only one who's going through this situation.
And that's what shame and guilt does. That's exactly what it does. It makes you feel alone in the situation. And here we are back at vulnerability. That's why it's so important, because me being vulnerable helps you understand that you're not the only one who has been through this situation. You've seen that I've gone through it and I've come through it, and you've seen me as a person that lets you know that you can be on the other side of it as well.
When is it good to be vulnerable?
I don't know. That's something I'm still dealing with. So I feel like being vulnerable is always the right thing to do when you know it's going to help somebody else. In this, like I'm nervous right now. I'm nervous having this conversation, but I feel like me being vulnerable, someone listening can get something from this and be helped through my vulnerability.
If someone has gone through the types of things that you've indicated, sexual trauma, sexual abuse, what do you recommend to them? Who should they contact? Who should they talk to? What's the first step? If they feel like, hey, I'm at the end of the rope, nobody would understand where I am. I feel like checking out. I feel so alone. These things, again, that aren't talked about a lot in African-American communities. People like to sweep things under the rug. What do you recommend for them?
I would definitely recommend going to, if it's a child, going to a trusted adult, your school counselor, and trying to get professional help. I feel like getting professional help is not talked about enough, and it's what so many people, especially people who have gone through trauma, need. You need counseling. You need someone who has been through a setting where they know and they've learned skills to be able to help you through such a traumatic situation.
I like what we talked about in the pornography addiction episode in terms of getting a counselor. I thought that Ira made a really good point about sometimes people give up real quick and they kind of check out when they say, oh, I talked about it. That didn't work. Let me just go do whatever.
Let me say something about that. Especially because I'm like an advocate for going to counseling. Going to counseling is the exact same thing as going to Walmart and picking something that you want. You're going to pick something that works for you. And counseling, you're paying money for it. They are being paid, or you're paying for a service to be rendered. So don't feel bad, or don't feel like you have to stay with a certain person. Don't feel like, oh, because this person didn't work, I shouldn't try another person. You have to find a person that clicks and that you're comfortable with. Shop for a counselor just like you would anything.
That's good advice. That's really good advice. These are some pretty deep topics we've kind of been dealing with.
Should I tell the people you didn't have faith in me?
No, I absolutely have faith in you. I'm just grateful, and I'm hoping that these conversations really help people to search their hearts and obtain the healing and deliverance and the restoration that so many people need. You think it's a good idea for us to be delving into these deep topics on Heart to Hearts?
Absolutely. I think that's what it's for. And we are not trying to be like any other podcast or any other show. We're not, mocking anyone else. I think we are doing exactly what we are supposed to be. This is the most comfortable I've been. I'll say that.
Requiring us both to be vulnerable. And I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
Man.
I'm proud of you too. I feel pretty good.
I'm grateful for not only the healing in the people who are watching, but also the healing that takes place in us, the people we know, the healing behind the scenes. And I'm grateful to be a part of it.
And I will say this was quite healing for me. Like I feel really good that I did it.
That's awesome.
Thank you. So go spread joy with a contagious smile, and a hug doesn't hurt. You never know what life you might change or whose heart you might be healing. I am Janice Grace, your co-host, with my brother, your host, Terrence.